Hey guys, welcome to this edition of Malibu and Dad. Today I do a little bit different story for you guys. We're here at Oakside Cemetery in Zephyrhills, Florida. Now you know me, as you can see in my hat, I'm a veteran. I love to do veteran stories, things about veterans and where they're buried, and especially the Civil War stuff, you know. So I came out to Zephyrhills looking for some Civil War graves, and I found some. But this is where the story kind of turns. So come along guys, I explain this story with you. As you know, I like the Civil War graves. Here's one here. And this is a special cemetery here in Zephyrhills. They really honor the war veterans, which I really like. But I was so surprised to find out that there were actually many Civil War graves. All scattered throughout the older section of this cemetery. Here's a bunch of them here. So I want to give kudos to the beginning of the story to these guys. These men who died bravely in the Civil War. A lot of these are Union soldiers, not Confederate. And it's quite a pretty neat cemetery. As you can see, it's nestled here in Zephyrhills, Florida. Our story takes me to some history. So I was looking up this area, and it was very unique. I came across a story about a Doctor Carl Tanzler. We'll call him Dr. Carl for short. The story begins in the beautiful area of Key West, Florida, back in the late 40s, early 50s, when Dr. Carl was a well-known doctor who'd come from Europe, actually from Germany, and he had several degrees. He was a doctor of medicine, and he worked down in the Keys at a hospital where he was helping people. At the time, it was TB, which was just a horrible disease. It was killing people. TB was just out of control back then. Dr. Carl worked at this hospital, and he's trying to help out people. And he came across a young lady named Elena Hoyas. Elena was 22 years old. She had contracted tuberculosis. She was dying. She was being treated by the doctor. The doctor was slowly but surely trying to help her, but he just couldn't. There was just no cure for TB back then. So what happened was, Elena finally passed away. During this time, as he was treating her, he fell in love with Elena, became friends with her family, and Elena was such a beautiful young lady that this doctor, he just fell madly in love with her. And he just couldn't bear the fact that she had passed away, and he dearly was infatuated and obsessed with her. So what he did was, upon her death, because he knew being buried in Key West, the water would get to her body, he convinced her family to put her in a mausoleum grave of cement. Something that he could put a sealed tight coffin in with a fluid of formaldehyde and preserve her body. You're probably wondering, well, why would he want to preserve her body? Well, the big reason why he was so obsessed with her, he would soon thereafter move her body, and he'd move somewhere close to the sea with her body. And he made a death mask made of silk and rubber and kind of like waxy material. And he was obsessed. He brought her out of the cemetery in her mausoleum to a seaside home that he'd purchased, where he would pretty much marry her and take her body and, well, this is a PG show, but that's not good what happened. So I'll explain the rest to you. So during this time, as he had this love affair with Elena, It wasn't so natural. And he was so obsessed with her that Elena's sister started to get a little bit suspicious and started wondering, hey, where's my sister? You know, what's going on? So she confronted the doctor, and the doctor says, well, I've got her upstairs at the house. And he showed her the body. She had been well preserved with the death mask, and her body was put together with materials and wax and perfumes. A lot of the neighbors said, you know, prior to the discovery, he'd always come home at night, play piano. They would hear laughter. They would see him bringing presents and different perfumes. What he was doing was he was bringing these to Elena, Miss Hoyas. And it's kind of sad. Turned out to be some crazy love story. But Elena was already married. So that was even more bizarre. So after the sister confronted him, she demanded that the body be taken and exhumed and taken away from him. And he there, soon thereafter, was brought to trial for taking this body and doing what he did. And the thing was, state of Florida, statute of limitations died out after 2 years. He wasn't discovered with her body till 7 years later after her burial. So he was tried and found out guilty. Statute of limitations didn't allow it to happen. So ultimately he got off with a crime, brokenhearted because Elena was soon thereafter reinterned somewhere else in a secret location. Only 3 people knew where she was, and they're all dead now. But where this whole story comes in a circle is right here in Zephyrhills. And this is what I want to show you guys. Just to have a little bit of adventuring and getting out like I do, I come across this story. And guess who's buried here? That's right. The doctor is buried right here. I'm going to show you. So as I am going through my history and trying to find some obituaries, I find out that the doctor is buried here. And I'd heard this story way back. Never think I'd ever do a vlog or a story about this guy, not even knowing he'd ever be in Zephyrhills. But it came to light that the woman that he was once married to and he'd abandoned in Germany lived here in Zephyrhills. And obviously, her name was Doris. And Doris evidently really loved him because Doris is buried right here. And the last name is Tanzler. She was born in 1889. She died in 1977. And she went to church here at the First Presbyterian of Zephyrhills. She passed away here. Now the crazy thing is there's this unmarked grave right next to hers. Evidently she had moved here. It is unmarked. He's said to be here, buried right next to her. I don't know. I'm still going to look at some records, but I wanted to bring you this story because it's such a remarkable story of how he was a doctor in Key West, Florida, comes here where his former wife is actually buried. We're not talking about Ellen and I. We're talking about, we're not talking about Miss Hoyas. We're talking about his first wife he abandoned back in Germany. She made it here and lived in Zephyrhills, a normal life. And somehow this all comes together here, and this is where he's buried. Now, as I'm doing more research and looking around, I come across this grave. It's unmarked, but it says Crystal Tanzler, our darling. I'm not sure if this is Doris and Carl's daughter or who this is, but evidently they've got some lineage here in Zephyrhills. This is an amazing story. Like I said, I am so grateful to come upon it because it's just a strange story of a man who was a doctor, got so obsessed, took this body of this young girl who had TB, got it away from the burial site where she was entombed, and brought her to a seaside home to later be discovered by her sister and ultimately re-entombed somewhere secretly. And here are the Dr. Lays who did all this here in Zephyrhills, Florida, right in my own backyard here in Tampa, Florida, close to Tampa, Florida. So guys, you never know. That's why I tell you, going around cemeteries and checking out history and doing adventures can bring so many cool stories in history. I hope you enjoy this bizarre story. It's not the normal Malibu and Dad stuff, but it's just so interesting, guys, how somebody ends up here in our own backyard in Florida with such a remarkable story as the doctor from Key West, who is German, and does all this with his body, this young lady who had TB. I had to bring it to you. It's strange, but noteworthy that it can happen anywhere, any place where you can just stumble on a historical thing and something that's kind of neat and different. You know, this is definitely a case of necrophiliac and all kinds of craziness. Even though the doctor was found to be sane, he had an obsession. And sometimes obsessions can be worse than actual mental illness. So anyway, guys, thanks for coming along on this crazy, bizarre story. It was just too cool to pass up. Hope you all are doing good out there. Thank you for joining us on this story, and hope you're having a good weekend. Take care. Until our next adventure, it's me and Malibu saying have a great day. We love you. God bless you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.